I don't usually make this type of content, but if you've ever heard of D&D, you've probably heard about the OGL situation. If you haven't, there's a lot of people who can explain it way better than I could. But essentially, Wizards of the Coast tried to rug pull their community and the entire tabletop role-playing game community in one fell swoop, to much resistance. Again, there's people who can explain it better, because while that is important information for the background of what I'm going to talk about, it isn't what I'm making this video for. No, as you probably guessed from the title, this video is going to be about the early access CRPG Baldur's Gate 3 by Larian Studios. Baldur's Gate 3 is the third title in a series of games set in Wizards of the Coast Forgotten Realms, the mainline universe that pretty much all of the Dungeons & Dragons modules take place in. The first two games were beloved by a generation of CRPG fans, developed by BioWare, who you may know for Neverwinter Nights 1, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars The Old Republic, and Anthem. Anyway, it was produced by Black Isle Studios and Interplay, also known for these games. Wow, that's a lot of games. Some of which you might notice in particular the Fallout games, Planescape, and Icewind Dale, which are other D&D games, and of course all of the other Baldur's Gate games prior to 3. A lot of the people who worked at Black Isle Studios went to found Obsidian and make such games as Neverwinter Nights 2, Knights of the Old Republic 2, Pillars of Eternity, and Fallout New Vegas. Now, enough about the origins of the Baldur's Gate franchise. Let's talk about 3 things that are currently plaguing the latest installment. 1. People that don't think that Baldur's Gate 3 deserves the title of a Baldur's Gate game. Some people say this because the gameplay of Baldur's Gate 3 is not like the first 2 installments, which is true. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 both had real-time combat with pause, and Baldur's Gate 3 is turn-based combat but with shared initiative. I can give that to those people. Granted, I enjoy the turn-based combat, being a fan of Larian's prior Divinity Original Sin games, and D&D itself is also a turn-based game with an initiative roll dictating everyone's turn in combat that Larian does simulate in Baldur's Gate 3. But I still respect enjoying your CRPGs in real time, being a fan of Owlcat's Pathfinder games. However, some people think that Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't count as a Baldur's Gate game because the Ball-Spawn aren't going to be in it. Well, the Ball-Spawn might not be, but Ball has to have some place in the plot. We get a loading screen message that says, "The Dead Three, Ball, Bane, and Merkel, were all once mortal men, but ascended to godhood in a strange bargain with Yurgle, the original god of death, murder, and strife." This is most commonly the first loading screen message I see when I load up a prior save. We can also find a book that mentions this deal between Yurgle and the Dead Three, as well as the tomb you can find in the same basement as the book, which has a statue of Yurgle that your character will comment on.
That's Yurgle, scribe of the dead. I didn't think anyone still worshipped him.
And to back some of these theories up with timeline and lore, here's an excerpt from the Forgotten Realms wiki about Ball. We see that Ball has been reborn as a mortal, along with the other 2 of the Dead Three. We can see here that some worshippers of the Dead Three murdered civilians in the city of Baldur's Gate in 1492 DR. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to take place in 1494 DR. The Mind Flayer tadpole we've got floating around inside our brain, it's a plot hook. We're probably going to lose it in Act 2 or 3. Mind Flayer tadpoles have a famously short gestation period for transforming you into a Mind Flayer. We are dealing with a different kind of tadpole. This one's taking longer, but we're still going to get it removed as soon as possible. The search for a healer to remove this thing? It's not going to be the whole game. We find out in Chapter 1 that we're dealing with other people who have these Mind Flayer parasites, some of whom are worshipping an unknown god named the Absolute. That's the obvious thread we're going to follow. We're going to find out who's behind the cult of the Absolute, and my bets or that it's gonna be The Dead 3. Number 2 of the things that are plaguing the latest installment of the Baldur's Gate franchise. It's never gonna come out ideology. Have you guys ever seen the meme attributing that quote, "A delayed game is eventually good, but a bad game is bad forever," to Shigeru Miyamoto? Yeah, he probably didn't say that, but guess what? If you rush the guy cooking your pizza to take it out of the oven sooner, when you get it, it probably won't be fucking done. And besides, we've got an August 2023 release date, so literally 6 more months. Just be fucking patient, guys. And last but not least on the list of things that are plaguing the latest installment of Baldur's Gate, the OGL and people that boycotted Baldur's Gate 3 because of it for some reason. Wizards of the Coast made a great fumble, and we all know that. It's now thankfully been retracted. We, the fans, get to keep the OGL 1.0, and the 5.1 edition SRD has been uploaded to the Creative Commons. So no matter what Wizards of the Coast does in the future, we will still have 5th edition and all of its material available in stores and online, and the creators of third-party D&D content are safe from Hasbro's filthy little money-grubbing paws. Which is good, and it happened because the community pushed the hell back. Remember that putting your money where your mouth is, for example, out of corporations' hands, is a very effective form of protest when it's possible to do so. Anyway, some people decided to take their punishment of WotC a little too far and started picking on Larian Studios for some reason. Mind you, one of the most downright infuriating parts of OGL 1.1 and 1.2 were that they were trying to stiff third-party content creators out of their hard-earned cash. So it really doesn't make sense to me why, to support third-party content creators, you would start boycotting a third-party content creator's game. Larian has always fulfilled their promises. When Divinity Original Sin 1 came out, Larian made so much money from the Kickstarter and selling the game on Steam and GOG that they re-released the game as a definitive edition on console, then re-released that definitive edition on PC. And then I'll be damned if the crazy Belgian bastards didn't do the exact same thing with Divinity Original Sin 2, making enough money from the initial PC release to give console players yet another definitive edition with another taste of what they can do, utilizing and improving on nearly everything from the first Original Sin game, before re-releasing it again as a definitive edition on PC. Larian, as a company, is not just out for your money. They're not trying to pull a switcheroo and make you pay full price for some half-assed video game that wouldn't even be worth half of what you pay. No, Larian wants to sell you video games so they can make more video games. Let them reap that sweet Wizards money. They deserve it for dropping the absolutely banger Original Sin series. And hey, you want to know something else? Every time I've ever experienced a bug in Baldur's Gate 3 and I emailed Larian about it, they fixed it next fucking patch. Now I'm going to close out this video before I unashamedly suck their dicks for half an hour. On an unrelated note, Sven Vinke, if you're seeing this video, hit me up. All jokes aside, my conclusion is this. If you don't want to play Baldur's Gate 3, then don't. If you don't want to pay $60 for a game that's in early access, don't. And wait till it comes out. But if you do want to play an amazing modern CRPG based on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rules, with a captivating, immersive story, fun characters, interesting side quests, satisfying combat with phenomenal sound effects, and an even better soundtrack made by a company that actually gives a shit about the people who play their games, actually listens and responds to bug reports, actually tries to help you solve any glitch or bug you might experience in-game, check out Baldur's Gate 3. You won't be disappointed. See ya.